"You're fired. My daughter deserves a real professional, not some amateur playing dress-up." Sarah's future mother-in-law said it loud enough that everyone at the venue turned to stare. The bride, Sarah's own sister Emily, looked down at her phone, pretending not to hear. The groom shifted uncomfortably. The venue coordinator froze mid-step, and Sarah stood there, her tablet clutched in her hands, her carefully planned timeline for Emily's dream wedding still glowing on the screen. She had spent 6 months planning this wedding, for free. Because Emily was her sister. Because family helps family. She smiled, set down her tablet, and walked out. What Sarah's family didn't know was that she'd just been offered a job at the most exclusive wedding planning firm in Boston. What they were about to discover was that humiliating her in public was the biggest mistake they'd ever make. Sarah Mitchell was 32 years old, a self-taught wedding planner who'd built a modest but successful business over 6 years. She specialized in intimate, thoughtful weddings for couples who valued creativity over convention. Her events were beautiful, personal, and always came in under budget while exceeding expectations. But none of that mattered to her family. Because Sarah didn't work for a prestigious firm, she didn't have a fancy office or a staff. She ran her business from her apartment in Cambridge, coordinating vendors via email and phone calls, creating mood boards on her laptop, doing everything herself. In the Mitchell family, success meant titles, offices, and impressive business cards. Sarah's older sister Emily was a marketing director at a tech company. Their brother James was a corporate attorney. Their parents Patricia and Robert had built a successful real estate development company. Sarah was the wedding planner, the one with the creative but impractical career, the one who made decent money but nothing impressive, the one who was always busy with other people's special days but never seemed to have a special day of her own. When Emily got engaged 8 months ago, she'd asked Sarah to plan her wedding, not because she valued Sarah's expertise, but because it seemed like a convenient way to save money. "You plan weddings anyway," Emily had said over brunch, "and we're family, it'll be fun working together." Sarah should have said no, should have recognized that Emily's request came with an undertone of "you can do this for free, right?" But she'd been hopeful. Naive, she'd thought maybe this would be a chance to show her family what she could really do. She'd spent 6 months creating Emily's dream wedding, a garden ceremony at the historic Crane estate, followed by a reception in the mansion's great room, 200 guests, a 5-course dinner, a live band, custom florals, and a dessert display that would look like something from a magazine. Total budget, $80,000. A fortune to most people, but modest for a wedding of this scale in Boston. Sarah had negotiated with every vendor personally, leveraging her relationships to get better rates. She'd designed the invitations herself, coordinated all the logistics, managed the timeline, and handled 1,000 small details that Emily and Patricia never saw. She'd done all of this while still managing her regular clients, sometimes working 16-hour days, sacrificing her own time and energy because it was for family. And she'd done it for free, not just without a planning fee, but often covering deposits and expenses out of her own pocket when Emily's budget got tight. The venue walkthrough where everything imploded had been scheduled for 11 days before the wedding. It was supposed to be a final check, making sure every detail was perfect. Sarah had arrived early as always, with her tablet full of notes and her portable printer for any last-minute sign updates. The venue coordinator, a woman named Michelle who'd worked with Sarah many times, greeted her warmly. "Sarah, everything looks incredible. You've really outdone yourself." "Thanks, Michelle. Is the family here yet?" "Just arrived. They're in the bridal suite with someone named Diane." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Diane? Diane Morrison," she said. "Another wedding planner, I think." Sarah walked into the bridal suite to find Emily, Patricia, and a woman she'd never met standing around a table covered with fabric samples and printouts. Diane Morrison. Sarah knew the name. Morrison Events was one of Boston's most established wedding planning firms, catering to wealthy clients who wanted traditional, elegant affairs. Diane herself was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that came from decades of experience. Sarah, Emily said, her voice overly bright. There you are. This is Diane Morrison. She's going to be helping us with some final touches. Final touches, Sarah repeated carefully. Just some concerns Patricia had. Diane said, her smile professional but cold. Nothing major. We're simply ensuring everything meets expectations. Sarah looked at her sister, waiting for an explanation. Emily still wouldn't meet her eyes. What concerns? Sarah asked. Patricia stepped forward. Sarah, we appreciate everything you've done. But this is an $80,000 event, and frankly, we're not confident you can execute at this level. I've been executing at this level for 6 years. At your scale, yes, but this is different. This is Emily's wedding. My daughter's wedding. We can't afford mistakes. There won't be mistakes. Everything is planned down to the minute. That's what concerns us. Diane interjected smoothly. Your timeline is very detailed, but it doesn't account for the kind of contingencies that experienced planners build in. What happens if the band is late? What if the caterer needs more setup time? These are things you learn after hundreds of events. I've coordinated over 100 events. Small events, Patricia said. Emily's wedding has 200 guests, a full band, elaborate florals. This requires a level of expertise we're not sure you have. Sarah felt her face getting hot. This wasn't a conversation about logistics. This was a public questioning of her competence, her professionalism, her worth. Sarah said, ignoring the others. Is this what you want? Emily finally looked at her. I just want everything to be perfect. It will be perfect. I've made sure of that. Sarah, don't take this personally, Patricia said. We're just being practical. Diane has offered to take over coordination from this point forward. You've done the planning work, which we're grateful for, but the actual execution needs a professional. I am a professional. A professional with an office, a staff, insurance, backup systems. Diane added, I'm not saying you're not capable, dear. I'm saying you're not equipped for an event of this magnitude. The condescension in her voice made Sarah's hands clench, but what hurt more was Emily's silence. Her sister was letting this happen, letting Patricia and this stranger dismiss 6 months of Sarah's work, her expertise, her dedication. You're right, Sarah said quietly. Everyone looked surprised. I'm not equipped for this, not because I lack the skills, but because I'm not equipped to work with people who don't respect me. Sarah, Emily started. I'm done. You want Diane to handle your wedding? Fine, she can have it. All of it. You're being dramatic, Patricia said. Am I? You just told me in front of a stranger and the venue coordinator that I'm not professional enough for my own sister's wedding. After 6 months of work I've done for free, how exactly should I react to that? We're not saying you're not talented, Emily tried. We're just saying you're fired. The words came from Diane, not Patricia. But Patricia didn't contradict her. My daughter deserves a real professional, not some amateur playing dress-up. Patricia said it loud enough that Michelle, still standing in the doorway, heard every word. The room went silent. Sarah looked at each of them. Emily, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. Patricia, who looked self-righteous and certain. Diane, who looked satisfied. She smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Because in that moment something crystallized for her. She was done seeking their approval. Done trying to prove herself to people who would never value her. Done sacrificing herself for family who saw her as less than. You're absolutely right, Sarah said. Emily deserves a real professional. Good luck with everything. She set down her tablet on the table, gathered her bag and walked out. Michelle caught up with her in the parking lot. Sarah, I'm so sorry, that was completely inappropriate. It's fine. It's not fine. You're an excellent planner. I've worked with you on a dozen events, and you're more organized than half the professionals who come through here. Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that. What are you going to do? Sarah pulled out her phone and looked at an email she'd received 2 weeks ago. An offer from Luminous Events, the most prestigious wedding planning firm in Boston. The firm that handled celebrity weddings, billionaire galas and events that got featured in Vogue and Martha Stewart weddings. They'd offered her a position as senior planner with a salary of $120,000 plus commissions. She'd been sitting on the offer, unsure if she wanted to give up her independence to work for someone else. But standing in that parking lot, still stinging from her family's dismissal, Sarah realized something important. She didn't need to prove herself to her family. She needed to prove herself to the world. She opened the email and hit reply. I accept your offer. When can I start? The response came within 10 minutes. Monday. Welcome to Luminous Events. Sarah drove home, called her current clients to explain she was transitioning to a new firm but would still be handling their events, and then did something she hadn't done in months. She took the rest of the day off, went to a movie, had a nice dinner, slept soundly. Her family thought they'd fired her. What they'd actually done was set her free. Sarah started at Luminous Events the following Monday. The office was everything she'd imagined, a stunning space in Back Bay with floor-to-ceiling windows, a dedicated design studio, and a conference room that looked like something from Architectural Digest. The founder and CEO, a woman named Victoria Ashford, greeted Sarah personally. Victoria was in her 50s, elegant and formidable, with a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. Sarah, welcome. I've been following your work for the past year. Your creativity and attention to detail are exactly what we need here. Thank you for the opportunity. I won't lie to you, this job is demanding. Our clients expect perfection, and we deliver it. But if you can handle the pressure, you'll build a reputation that opens every door in this industry. I can handle it. Good. Your first event is in 6 weeks. A wedding for a tech CEO and a surgeon. 500 guests, waterfront venue. Unlimited budget. Think you can manage? Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was 10 times the scale of anything she'd done independently. But she'd been preparing for this her entire career. Absolutely. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah threw herself into her work. She met with the couple, understood their vision, coordinated with vendors she'd never worked with before because they were too expensive for her previous clients. She designed a wedding that would be stunning, memorable, and flawlessly executed. She also didn't respond to any messages from her family. Emily had called twice, left voicemails that were vague and apologetic. Patricia had texted once, asking if Sarah was planning to attend the wedding as a guest. Sarah deleted the message without responding. 3 weeks before Emily's wedding, Sarah was working late at the Luminous office when Victoria stopped by her desk. How's the Reston wedding coming? On track. All vendors confirmed. Timeline finalized. Contingency plans in place. Excellent. I have another project for you. A smaller event but high profile. Anniversary party for a state senator and his wife. 200 guests. Very traditional. Very elegant. Can you handle both? Yes. Victoria studied her. You know, when I first reached out to you, I wasn't sure you'd accept. You seemed attached to running your own business. I was. But I realized I was limiting myself. Working alone meant I could only take on so many clients, only grow so far. Here, I can do work that actually challenges me. And your family's wedding? The one you were fired from? Sarah looked up, surprised. How did you know about that? Boston's wedding industry is small. Word travels. I heard what happened at the Crane estate. Diane Morrison is a hack who's been riding on her firm's reputation for a decade. Your sister made a terrible choice. My sister made the choice that felt safe to her. Safe rarely produces exceptional results. Victoria paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad it happened. If they'd let you plan their wedding, you wouldn't be here. And Luminous is better with you in it. After Victoria left, Sarah sat at her desk, looking out at the Boston skyline. She thought about Emily's wedding, now just 3 weeks away. Thought about Diane Morrison, coordinating the event Sarah had planned. Thought about her family celebrating without her. And she felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, just a distant sort of detachment. She had moved on. Emily's wedding took place on a Saturday in June. Sarah spent that day at the Reston wedding, a magnificent waterfront affair that went flawlessly. The couple was thrilled. The guests were impressed. Victoria called it one of the best weddings Luminous had executed all year. Sarah got home at midnight, exhausted and satisfied. She checked her phone and saw 17 missed calls from various family members. She opened the voicemails. The first was from Emily crying. "Sarah, I'm so sorry, the wedding was a disaster. Diane messed up everything. The timeline was wrong. The flowers were late. The band played during dinner. It was awful. Please call me back." The second was from Patricia, her voice sharp and angry. "Sarah, I don't know what you said to the vendors, but they were completely unprofessional today. This is your fault. Call me." The third was from James, her brother, sounding uncomfortable. "Hey, Sarah. Today was pretty rough. Mom's blaming you, but I think she's just deflecting. Anyway, Emily's pretty upset. Maybe give her a call?" Sarah listened to all 17 messages. Then she deleted them and went to bed. The next morning she got a text from Michelle, the venue coordinator at Crane Estate. "I'm so sorry about yesterday. Diane Morrison is a nightmare to work with. Nothing was organized. She kept changing the timeline, and she blamed everyone but herself when things went wrong. I wish you'd been there. It would have been beautiful." Sarah replied, "Thank you for letting me know. I hope Emily and her husband were still able to enjoy their day. They tried. But it wasn't what it could have been." Sarah felt a small pang of sympathy for her sister. Whatever their issues, Emily had deserved a beautiful wedding day. But Sarah also knew that this wasn't her problem to solve. Emily had made her choice. So had Patricia. Now they were living with the consequences. Monday morning, Sarah arrived at Luminous to find Victoria waiting in her office with a bottle of champagne. "The Restons called me yesterday. They said it was the best wedding they'd ever attended. They've already referred 3 of their friends to us, all high-budget events. Sarah, you knocked this out of the park. Thank you. I'm promoting you. Senior planner was a trial position. You're now creative director. Salary increases to $170,000, plus you'll oversee other planners on large events." Sarah sat down, stunned. "Victoria, I've been here less than 2 months, and you've already proven you're exceptional. I don't wait to reward talent. The promotion is effective immediately." After Victoria left, Sarah sat in her new office, which came with the promotion, looking at her new business cards that read creative director under her name. 8 weeks ago, she'd been fired from her sister's wedding and called an amateur. Now she was creative director at Boston's most prestigious wedding firm. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Emily. "Please talk to me. I made a mistake. I'm so sorry." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. "Emily, I forgive you, but I'm not going to forget what happened or pretend it didn't hurt. You chose Mom and a stranger over me. That was your decision to make, and I respect it, but I'm building my own life now, and I need space from family drama. I hope you and your husband are happy together." Emily's response came immediately. "Can we at least have coffee? I want to explain. Maybe in a few months. I'm not ready yet." Sarah put her phone away and opened her calendar. She had consultations with 3 new clients this week, all referrals from the Reston wedding. All of them had budgets exceeding $100,000. This was her life now, and it was extraordinary. 3 months after Emily's wedding, Sarah was settling into her role as creative director at Luminous Events. She'd overseen 6 major weddings, all of them successful, all of them generating glowing reviews and referrals. Her reputation was growing rapidly in Boston's wedding industry. She'd also started getting calls from vendors she'd worked with during Emily's wedding planning. They'd been confused about the switch to Diane Morrison, and several had reached out to say they preferred working with Sarah. That Morrison woman was a nightmare. One florist told her. She kept changing orders, blamed us for her mistakes, and tried to shortchange us on payment. "If you ever need florals for an event, we'd love to work with you again." Sarah kept those relationships warm, knowing that a good vendor network was essential in the wedding industry. She'd also maintained her distance from her family. She'd responded to a few texts from Emily, keeping things polite but distant. She'd ignored messages from Patricia entirely. James had invited her to lunch once, and she'd gone, mostly because James had never been part of the problem. Mom's being impossible, James told her over sandwiches. She keeps saying you sabotaged Emily's wedding. How exactly did I sabotage it? I wasn't even there. That's her logic. She thinks you told the vendors to mess things up on purpose. That's insane. And insulting to the vendors, who were trying to do their jobs despite having a disorganized planner. I know. I've tried to tell her, but she's not hearing it. She needs someone to blame. And you're convenient. What does Emily say? Emily knows it wasn't your fault. But she's not standing up to Mom about it. She just wants everything to blow over so we can all move on. Sarah took a bite of her sandwich, thinking, James, I love Emily. She's my sister. But I can't move on from this. Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because nothing's actually changed. Mom still doesn't respect what I do. Emily still prioritizes keeping Mom happy over being honest. And I've finally built a life where I don't need their approval. So what? We're just never going to be a family again? We'll be a family, just a different kind. One where I don't sacrifice myself to make everyone else comfortable. James nodded slowly. I get it. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you've built at Luminous is impressive. Thanks. 6 months after joining Luminous, Sarah got an opportunity that would change everything. Victoria called her into the main conference room, where a couple in their early 30s sat waiting. Sarah, this is Alexandra and Michael Winters. They're getting married next June, and have specifically requested you as their planner. Sarah sat down, curious. It's nice to meet you. How did you hear about me? From my sister, Alexandra said with a smile. She attended the Reston wedding. She said it was the most beautiful event she'd ever been to, and insisted we work with whoever planned it. The consultation went wonderfully. Alexandra and Michael knew exactly what they wanted, a sophisticated outdoor wedding at a private estate, incorporating elements of both their families' traditions, with an emphasis on personal touches and meaningful details. Budget? Sarah asked. 300,000. Michael said. We want this to be special, and we're willing to invest in making it perfect. After they left, Victoria looked at Sarah with an expression that might have been pride. That's the biggest single wedding we've booked this year. If you pull this off, you'll be untouchable in this industry. I'll pull it off. And she did. Over the next 8 months, Sarah coordinated every aspect of the Winters wedding. She found a private estate in the Berkshires with views of rolling mountains. She designed a ceremony space that incorporated both families' cultural traditions beautifully. She coordinated with vendors who typically only worked with A-list celebrities. The wedding was scheduled for early June, exactly 1 year after Emily's disaster. The event itself was breathtaking. Every detail was perfect. From the custom-designed invitations to the 7-course dinner, to the surprise fireworks display at the end of the night. Guests called it the most beautiful wedding they'd ever attended. It was featured in Martha Stewart weddings. It trended on social media, and Sarah, standing at the edge of the reception, watching everything unfold flawlessly, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was what she was meant to do. This was her art, her calling, her expertise. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Diane Morrison. I'm retiring next month and selling Morrison Events. I heard about the Winters wedding. Impressive work. If you're ever interested in owning your own firm again, call me. Sarah stared at the message. Diane Morrison, the woman who'd called her an amateur, who'd taken over Emily's wedding and ruined it, was now acknowledging her expertise. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. 1 year after being fired from Emily's wedding, Sarah received an invitation in the mail. It was for Emily's first anniversary party. The invitation was elegant, printed on heavy cardstock, and included a personal note from Emily in her handwriting. Sarah, I know things have been difficult between us this past year. I want you to know I'm truly sorry for how everything happened. You were right about everything. Please come to the party. I miss you. Love, Emily. Sarah held the invitation for a long time, thinking part of her wanted to ignore it, to maintain the distance she'd established. But another part, the part that remembered growing up with Emily, sharing secrets and dreams, missed her sister. She texted back, I'll be there. The party was at Emily and her husband David's new house in Brookline. Sarah arrived fashionably late, dressed in a stunning designer dress she'd bought with her first bonus from Luminous. The house was beautiful, recently renovated, filled with guests Sarah vaguely recognized from Emily's wedding. Patricia was there, of course, holding court near the bar. James waved from across the room. Emily greeted Sarah at the door, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You look amazing," Emily said finally. "Thanks, nice house. Can we talk privately?" They went upstairs to Emily's office, away from the party. Emily closed the door and immediately teared up. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I've wanted to say that for a year, but I didn't know how. What we did to you was awful. What you did was choose Mom's opinion over mine. That's what hurt. I know, I've replayed that day at the venue 1,000 times. I should have stood up for you. I should have told Diane and Mom to leave. But I was so worried about making Mom happy that I forgot about you entirely. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've had a year to think about it. Because my wedding was a disaster thanks to Diane. Because I've watched you become incredibly successful while I've been stuck feeling guilty. But mostly because I miss my sister." Sarah sat on the edge of Emily's desk. "Emily's not a mern wad merm. Med sibam portasting makin pearl. But I can't go back to how things were. Where I was always the one making sacrifices. Always the one trying to prove myself. I don't want to go back either. I want to move forward. As equals. Can you do that? Stand up to Mom when she dismisses me. I'm trying. It's not easy, but I'm trying. I actually told her yesterday that if she said anything negative about you tonight, I'd ask her to leave. How did that go?" She was shocked, but she agreed. They talked for another hour, carefully rebuilding what had broken between them. It wasn't perfect, and Sarah knew it would take time to fully trust Emily again, but it was a start. When they rejoined the party, Patricia approached Sarah immediately. "Sarah, you look well." "Thank you. I heard about your promotion at Luminous. Creative director. That's quite impressive." "It is." Patricia waited, clearly expecting Sarah to elaborate. When she didn't, Patricia continued uncomfortably. "I wanted to say that perhaps we were too hasty in our judgment last year. It's clear you've been quite successful." "Patricia," Sarah said calmly. "I appreciate you saying that. But I need you to understand something. My success isn't about proving you wrong. It's about building a life that matters to me. Whether you respect what I do is honestly no longer relevant to me." Patricia looked stunned. "That's rather harsh." "No, it's honest. You spent years making me feel like my career was less important than Emily's or James's. You fired me from my own sister's wedding and called me an amateur in front of strangers. I've forgiven you for that, but I'm not going to forget it or pretend it didn't fundamentally change our relationship. So that's it. You're just writing me off as your mother. No, I'm accepting you as you are, while protecting myself from your judgment. Big difference." Sarah walked away, leaving Patricia speechless. James found her on the back patio. That was intense. She needed to hear it. Mom's not used to people standing up to her. Then it's good practice for her. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at Emily's well-maintained garden. "You know what's funny?" James said. "When we were kids, Mom always said you were the sensitive one. The one who needed to toughen up. Turns out you were the strongest all along." "I wasn't stronger. I just finally got tired of being small to make other people comfortable." The party continued around them. Emily and David seemed happy together despite the rough start to their marriage. Guests mingled, drank wine, celebrated a year of marriage, and Sarah realized something important. She didn't need her family's approval anymore, but she also didn't need to cut them off entirely. She could maintain relationships on her own terms, with boundaries that protected her. That was growth. That was healing. 18 months after being fired from Emily's wedding, Sarah got a phone call that would test everything she'd built. "Sarah Mitchell, this is Caroline Bradford from Boston Magazine. We're doing a feature on the city's top wedding planners, and we'd love to include you." The article came out 2 months later. Boston's Best, the wedding planners making dreams come true. Sarah was featured prominently with photos from several of her events and quotes from satisfied clients. The article praised her creativity, organization, and ability to execute flawless events at any budget level. Diane Morrison was also in the article, though barely mentioned. A small sidebar noting her retirement and the closure of Morrison events. The article generated immediate buzz. Sarah's Instagram following exploded. Her phone rang constantly with new client inquiries. Victoria was thrilled. "This is the kind of publicity money can't buy," Victoria said. "You're officially one of the most sought-after wedding planners in Boston." Sarah's rates went up accordingly. She was now charging premium prices, and clients paid them happily. She'd gone from making decent money to making exceptional money. She bought a condo in Back Bay, a beautiful space with high ceilings and large windows. She bought a new car. She traveled for pleasure for the first time in years. And one Saturday afternoon, while shopping in Newbury Street, she ran into Diane Morrison. They both stopped, recognizing each other immediately. "Sarah," Diane said after a pause. "You look well." "So do you? I heard you retired." "I did. Sold the business. Finally have time to actually enjoy life instead of just coordinating other people's celebrations." They stood awkwardly for a moment. "I owe you an apology," Diane said finally. "What I said at the Crane estate, calling you an amateur, that was unprofessional and unkind. You're clearly an excellent planner, and I was wrong. Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth, Emily's wedding would have been much better if they'd kept you." "I know." Diane smiled slightly. "Of course you do. You're good at this. Better than I ever was, honestly. I was coasting on my firm's reputation for years. You actually care about your work, and it shows." After Diane left, Sarah stood on the sidewalk, processing the interaction. A year and a half ago, that woman had humiliated her publicly. Now she was apologizing, acknowledging Sarah's expertise. It felt good. But it also felt less important than Sarah would have expected. She'd already moved past needing that validation. 2 years after being fired, Sarah was approached by Victoria with an unusual proposition. "I'm opening a second location of Luminous Events in New York." Victoria said. "I want you to run it." "Run the entire New York office?" "Yes. You'd be managing director overseeing all events and planners. Full autonomy, significant salary increase, equity stake in the New York branch." It was an incredible opportunity. New York was the center of the luxury wedding industry. Running a luminous office there would cement Sarah's reputation as one of the top planners in the country. But it also meant leaving Boston, leaving the life she'd just built. "Can I think about it?" "Take a week." "But Sarah, opportunities like this don't come often. You're 34. This is the time to make big moves." Sarah spent a week seriously considering it. She talked to Emily, who encouraged her to take it. She talked to James, who said he'd miss her but understood. She even talked to Patricia, who seemed genuinely proud, though she didn't say it explicitly. In the end, Sarah decided to stay in Boston. Not because she was afraid of the challenge, but because she'd built something here that mattered to her. 3 years after being fired from Emily's wedding, Sarah was attending a charity gala when she overheard a conversation that made her pause. She was getting a drink at the bar when two women next to her were talking, not realizing Sarah could hear. "Did you hear about the Mitchell wedding? Patricia Mitchell's daughter? The one who got married a few years ago? That's the one. Apparently it was a complete disaster. The planner they hired was terrible. I heard they fired the original planner, who was actually Emily's sister or something. Big mistake, from what I understand. The sister is Sarah Mitchell from Luminous Events, right? I used her for my daughter's wedding last year. Absolute perfection. Emily must regret that decision every day." Sarah smiled to herself and walked away with her drink. The universe had a way of correcting things, she thought. That same week, Sarah got an unexpected call from a potential client who wanted to meet at the Crane estate, the venue where everything had fallen apart 3 years ago. When Sarah arrived, Michelle, the venue coordinator, greeted her warmly. "Sarah, I'm so glad you're here. I have a bride who specifically requested you after seeing your work in Boston Magazine." They walked toward the mansion, and Michelle said quietly, "You know, I think about that day 3 years ago sometimes. When your family fired you, it was so wrong. It was a long time ago. I know, but I've always wanted to tell you. That day changed something for me. I realized I was letting difficult clients and planners push me around because I was worried about conflict. After watching you walk out with your dignity intact, I started standing up for myself more. You inspired me, honestly." Sarah was touched. "Thank you, Michelle. That means a lot." The consultation went well. The bride, a young surgeon named Dr. Ananya Patel, was enthusiastic about working with Sarah. "Your reputation is incredible," Ananya said. "Everyone I talked to said you're the best in Boston. When I saw the Crane estate, I knew this was where I wanted to get married, and I knew you were who I wanted to plan it." Sarah took the job. Planning a wedding at the Crane estate, the venue where her family had humiliated her, felt like coming full circle. The wedding was scheduled for the following June, 4 years almost to the day after Emily's disaster. Over the next 10 months, Sarah poured herself into making Ananya's wedding extraordinary. Every detail was perfect. Every vendor carefully selected. Every moment thoughtfully planned. The wedding day arrived, and it was stunning. The ceremony was held in the same garden where Emily had been married, but transformed into something magical with flowering arches, elegant seating, and a string quartet that played beautifully. The reception in the great room was elegant and sophisticated, with floor-length tablecloths, candlelight and floral arrangements that made guests gasp. Everything ran perfectly. Not a single issue, not a moment of stress, just a beautiful celebration of two people in love. Michelle found Sarah during the reception. "This is one of the most beautiful weddings we've ever hosted here. You've completely redeemed this venue in my eyes." "It was never the venue's fault," Sarah said. "It was always about who was running the show." At the end of the night, as guests filed out and the cleanup crew began their work, Sarah stood in the garden where Emily had said "I do" 4 years ago. So much had changed since then. Sarah had gone from a struggling independent planner to a partner at luminous events, from someone her family dismissed to someone the industry respected, from someone who needed validation to someone who validated herself. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the garden, lit by strings of lights and the soft glow of the moon. Then she texted it to Emily. "Beautiful wedding at Crane Estate tonight. Thought you might like to see what this venue looks like when done right." Emily responded immediately. "It's gorgeous. You're incredible. I'm so proud of you." Sarah smiled and put her phone away. 4 years ago, getting fired from Emily's wedding had felt like the end of the world, like proof that she wasn't good enough, that her family had been right to doubt her. Now standing in that same venue, having just executed a flawless wedding that would be talked about for years, Sarah realized that moment had been a gift. It had forced her to stop seeking approval from people who would never give it freely. It had pushed her to bet on herself, to pursue opportunities she'd been too afraid to consider. It had taught her that sometimes the worst moments of your life were actually the beginning of your best ones. She wasn't grateful for the humiliation, but she was grateful for what came after. 5 years after being fired, Sarah was featured on the cover of Brides magazine, the planners shaping modern weddings. The article detailed her rise from independent planner to creative director to partner at luminous events. It included stunning photos from her most spectacular weddings and quotes from clients who called her a genius. The article also mentioned briefly that Sarah had been fired from her own sister's wedding early in her career, but had used that setback as motivation to build something extraordinary. When the magazine came out, Sarah's phone exploded with messages. Congratulations from colleagues, interview requests from podcasts, inquiries from potential clients with unlimited budgets. Emily called, her voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, the article is beautiful. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry I'm mentioned as the sister who fired you. It's fine, it's part of my story, but it makes me look awful. It makes you look human. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we fixed ours." Patricia called too, surprisingly. "Sarah, I saw the magazine. You look absolutely stunning on that cover." Thanks, Mom. I wanted to tell you something. I've been talking to a therapist about our family dynamics, about how I treated you over the years, and I'm realizing I owe you a real apology, not just for the wedding but for a lifetime of making you feel less important than your siblings. Sarah sat down, surprised. This was more honest than Patricia had ever been. I think I was threatened by you. Patricia continued. You chose a creative career, something I never had the courage to do. You pursued passion over prestige. And instead of being proud of that, I was critical. I'm sorry, Sarah, truly. Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot. Can we have dinner? Just you and me. I'd like to actually get to know who you are now, not who I assumed you were. They had dinner the following week. It was awkward at first, but slowly they found their way to real conversation. Patricia asked about Sarah's work, actually listened to the answers, showed genuine interest in her life. It wasn't a complete transformation. Patricia still had her moments of judgment and control, but it was progress. Real, meaningful progress. Around the same time, Sarah got a call from a name she never expected to hear from again, Diane Morrison. Sarah, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in buying Morrison Events. I thought you sold it. I did, to a corporate group. They've run it into the ground in 2 years. Now they're looking to unload it. And I thought of you. The firm still has name recognition, existing client contracts, valuable vendor relationships. With your reputation, you could rebuild it into something special. Sarah thought about it. Owning her own firm again, but this time with the resources and reputation to do it right. How much are they asking? The negotiations took 3 months. In the end, Sarah bought Morrison Events for a price that was high but manageable, given her savings and luminous partnership equity. She rebranded it as Mitchell Events, keeping some of Morrison's traditional elegance, while infusing it with her own creative vision. She hired 3 associate planners, all young women who reminded her of herself at their age. Hungry, talented, underestimated. She ran Mitchell Events alongside her partnership at Luminous, handling a smaller number of ultra-high-end clients who specifically wanted to work with her personally. At 37, Sarah Mitchell owned her own wedding planning firm and was a partner at Boston's most prestigious event company. She was one of the most successful planners in the country, with a waiting list for her services that stretched years into the future. She had built an empire from the ashes of that humiliating day at the Crane estate. 7 years after being fired from Emily's wedding, Sarah was standing in her office at Mitchell Events, looking out at the Boston skyline, when her assistant knocked on the door. Sarah, you have a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Who is it? Patricia Mitchell, your mother. Sarah was surprised. Patricia rarely came to her office. Send her in. Patricia entered, looking older than Sarah remembered, but also somehow softer. She sat down across from Sarah's desk. This is impressive, Patricia said, looking around at the elegant office. You've really built something special. Thank you. I wanted to tell you something. Emily is pregnant. Sarah smiled genuinely. That's wonderful. I'm happy for her. She wants you to plan the baby shower. I'd be honored. But more than that, Patricia continued, I want to apologize again, not just for the wedding but for everything. I've spent the past 2 years in therapy working through why I was so hard on you, and I've realized something important. Sarah waited. I was jealous. You had the courage to pursue something I never did. I wanted to be an artist when I was young, but my parents convinced me it was impractical. So I married your father, helped build his business, lived a comfortable but ultimately unfulfilling life. When you chose creativity over security, it forced me to confront my own regrets. Mom, I had no idea. How could you? I never told you. I was too busy projecting my fears onto you, too busy trying to make you choose the safe path I'd chosen. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. You were always the bravest one in our family, Sarah, and instead of celebrating that, I tried to diminish it. I'm sorry. They talked for an hour, really talked. Probably for the first time in Sarah's entire life. Patricia shared stories about her youth, her dreams, her regrets. Sarah shared her journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the growth. When Patricia left, she hugged Sarah tightly. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago." A month later, Sarah was planning Emily's baby shower when she got an unexpected call. "Sarah Mitchell. This is Lauren Chen from the American Wedding Planners Association. We'd like to offer you the Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's conference." Sarah was stunned. "I'm 39. Isn't lifetime achievement for people at the end of their careers?" "Typically, yes. But your impact on the industry has been so significant that the board voted unanimously to recognize you now. You've changed how we think about wedding planning, elevated the profession, inspired countless young planners. That's worth celebrating." The award ceremony was in Las Vegas in September. Sarah flew out with Victoria, Emily, and surprisingly Patricia. When her name was called, Sarah walked to the stage to a standing ovation from 1,000 wedding planners from across the country. At the podium, she looked out at the audience and thought about her journey. 7 years ago, she'd been fired from her own sister's wedding and called an amateur. Now she was receiving the industry's highest honor. "Thank you for this incredible recognition," Sarah began. "I'd like to dedicate this award to everyone who's ever been told they aren't good enough, professional enough, or experienced enough to succeed in this industry. I was told all those things. I was fired from my own sister's wedding because my family didn't believe I could handle a large event." She paused, seeing Emily and Patricia in the audience, both wiping their eyes. "But here's what I learned. Other people's opinions of you don't have to become your reality. When my family fired me, I had two choices: believe them and give up, or believe in myself and prove them wrong. I chose myself, and that choice changed everything." The applause was thunderous. If you're struggling, if you're doubted, if you're told you'll never make it in this business, remember this: your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's determined by whether you believe in yourself. Trust your vision, do the work, and build something so remarkable that the people who doubted you have no choice but to recognize it. After the ceremony, Emily found Sarah backstage. "That speech was beautiful, and I'm so sorry I was part of your struggle. You're also part of my success. If you hadn't fired me, I never would have joined Luminous. Never would have grown this fast. Never would have built Mitchell Events. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best outcome. Still, I wish I'd been there for you from the beginning. You're here now. That's what matters." They hugged sisters again, truly this time. That evening, Sarah, Emily, and Patricia had dinner together. Patricia raised her glass. "To Sarah, who taught us all what it means to be strong, successful, and unapologetically yourself." They clinked glasses, and Sarah felt a completeness she hadn't felt in years. Flying home the next day, Sarah reflected on her journey. 7 years from being fired to receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. 7 years from humiliation to triumph. But the real victory wasn't the award or the money or the reputation. The real victory was that she'd built a life that was entirely, authentically hers. She'd stopped seeking approval from people who withheld it and started validating herself. She'd learned that family relationships could be repaired, but only if everyone did the work. That success meant different things to different people, that the most important person who needed to believe in her was herself. And most importantly, she'd learned that sometimes the people who try to hold you back are actually pushing you forward. They just don't know it yet. Sarah Mitchell had been fired from her sister's wedding and called an amateur. She'd responded by becoming one of the most successful wedding planners in America. Not to prove them wrong, though that was satisfying, but to prove herself right, that she was talented, that she was professional, that she was worthy. And in the end, that was the only validation that mattered.